My name is Marjorie Caverly, and I'm 32 years old. This is the story of the night my family finally learned the difference between love and obligation, and the night I learned it too. I was barely in the door when Mom looked at me over her New Year's table, the candles wobbling like even they were nervous. She adjusted her paper crown and announced, as casually as someone pointing out a stain, "Your sister's divorced now, so you'll be taking care of her and the kids." Then she added, "Simple as that, daughter." Dad didn't even glance away from the game playing silently behind him. He just nodded and said, "If you disagree, the door's right there." I set my fork down slowly. "Perfect," I said. "Then I'm gone, and you can start paying your own mortgage. Simple as that." No yelling, no theatrics, just a clean snap inside my chest, like a wire pulled too tight finally giving way. I work underground most days where the air tastes like iron and the walls sweat. I come home wearing the mine like a second skin. I've always been the reliable one, lifting, fixing, hauling, stepping in before anyone even asked. The daughter who never gave them trouble because trouble was expensive. I learned early that being reliable bought peace. We never had stylish holidays, just folding tables, plastic tubs of forks, and whatever meat was cheapest that week. But New Year's? That was Mom's big show. Candles, crowns, and the good plates from Aunt Trudy she polishes with the same towel she uses to wipe the dog's paws. I arrived wearing my work jacket because my truck heater only believes in working when it feels like it. As soon as my boots touched the mat, Mom clicked her tongue. "You're tracking in half the county," she scolded, like dust was a personal insult. Ivy sat at the far end, her kids scattered around her. One was coloring on a napkin, the other chewing pretzels like they were precious metals. "Hey, Marge," she said, "do you have Zelle?" That was Ivy's version of hello. The house smelled like cabbage rolls and cheap champagne sweating in a scratched plastic bucket. I washed my hands and grabbed the only sharp knife to start carving. Mom hovered behind me. "Thinner, people are watching their figures." She meant herself. Then she took the first thick slice and hid it under lettuce. We ate in that quiet way families do, when no one wants to say the real things. Work hours, layoffs, who's struggling, who's pretending not to be. Dad asked about union meetings he never attends. Ivy scrolled through her phone. Mom dimmed the lights like mood lighting could make us look less tired. Then she cleared her throat. That sound has always been my cue to brace. "Marjorie," she said, "your sister's divorced now, so you'll be supporting her and the kids. That's just how it's going to be." Dad added, "If you disagree, the door's right there." A lifetime of pressure doesn't crush you all at once. It chips pieces off until finally the weight shifts. I stared at the candle wax slipping down like even it wanted to escape. My instinct whispered, "Say okay, keep the peace, be useful." But something colder rose up my spine. I set my napkin down. "Perfect," I said. "Then I'm done. Start paying your own mortgage." The words hit the table harder than any fork could. Ivy froze. Dad's hand twitched toward his glass. Mom smiled, slow, sharp, the smile she uses when she's about to weaponize a memory to make me feel small. I didn't blink. I'd bent for so many years that standing up felt like a new language. I grew up being told a man provides, even though I was the one working doubles while Dad waited for calls that never came. We weren't broke, but we lived one disaster away from it. Pride kept us looking middle class. Pride also made my parents meaner than they realized. I joined the mine right after high school. If you didn't go to college, you went underground or you left town. I went down. The foreman told me, "You'll smell like this forever." He wasn't wrong. But at least underground, the danger is honest. At home, I paid rent because Dad called it contributing. When a pipe burst, I hired a plumber and paid cash. Dad took the credit. "Easier that way," he said. Ivy moved out at 19 into an apartment with whining outlets. I gave her my extra space heater. Months later, I found it in Mom's garage sale. "It's not safe," Mom said, putting the $2 in her pocket. Ivy married Sean, charming, lazy, always borrowing tools he never returned. Their wedding was a potluck in a musty hall. Dad cried. He didn't cry when I got my permanent badge. I started paying for little things because it was easier than watching Ivy cry. Daycare, co-pays, car seats, gas. Just until Friday. Fridays kept multiplying. Mom shifted from hinting to expecting. Grab milk. Donate to the school. Cover Dad's back pain appointment. Every yes tightened the leash. Then came November. I came home after a double shift and found a note in Mom's handwriting. "Took your debit. We'll put it back Monday. She'd paid the minimum on a store card we don't use and bought new curtains because the light is rude. When I confronted her, she laughed. You're so sensitive. Then December mailed me a new nightmare, a home equity loan, with my forged signature on a house I don't own. Dad shrugged. Names don't mean much. By the time New Year's dinner arrived, the crack in me was already spreading. So when Mom issued her decree, the rest of the foundation gave way. Dad leaned back like some patriarch in a bad movie. You'll deposit half your check into your mother's account. We'll distribute as needed. He added, You minors don't track things anyway. I laughed. A small, sharp sound. I keep ledgers, I said. You have vibes. His face tightened. Mom slammed her hand on the table. We raised you. You raised a backup plan, I said, not a daughter. Her voice broke. Get out. I will, I said. I pulled out my phone, canceled every auto payment to their bills, and froze my debit card, the one in Mom's wallet. Her phone pinged, her face drained. What did you do? I stopped being your ATM. Dad jabbed a finger at me. That's a big mistake. Maybe, but it's mine. I placed a copy of the forged loan document next to his plate, my signature circled in red, and a handwritten note. Police report ready. Fix this tomorrow. Mom inhaled sharply. Dad swallowed hard. That's low, she whispered. No, that's a boundary. I looked at my niece and nephew. Hey, you two. Lego set in my truck. We'll build it this weekend. We're not nerds, one said. We're wolves. Even better, I said. I walked out into the cold, leaving their shouting behind me. Dad yelled from the doorway, Don't come back! I didn't turn around. Happy New Year, I told the night, and for once, the words felt like they belonged to me. I didn't sleep the night I walked out. My apartment felt too quiet, like the walls were waiting for me to fall apart. I sat on the couch in my work pants, still covered in mine dust, staring at the spot on the carpet where my boots had dropped. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach tightened. Mom's messages piled up first. You embarrassed us. You ruined the holiday. Your sister is crying. This is what selfishness looks like. Answer me. Dad's text came next, shorter, meaner, more confident he still owned authority over me. Fix this. You owe this family. Half your check. No excuses. You're being dramatic. You always were. I didn't answer a single one. The silence I gave him was the first real power I'd had in years. By morning, I felt wrung out, but I also felt something else. Something I hadn't felt since I was a teenager dreaming about leaving town. Room. Even the air felt bigger. I got dressed for my shift. As I tied my boots, the memory of Dad saying, minors don't track things anyway, replayed in my head. The kind of line he'd toss off because he thought I'd always take it. He forgot who signed my pay stubs. Underground, I moved in muscle memory. Tight spaces, low roofs, the hum of machinery, honest work. The mind didn't care who I disappointed. The mind didn't ask me to pay anyone's mortgage or daycare or phone bill. It only asked that I stay alive. My supervisor, Reggie, noticed the shadows under my eyes. You good? He asked. Better than last night, I said, which was the truth. He nodded like he understood more than I said. You ever need to switch shifts, let me know. Not for school pickups, though. Your mom already tried that. I blinked. What? He shrugged. Called me this morning. Wanted me to talk sense into you. I told her I don't manage souls, only schedules. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. Of course, the world had to be rearranged to suit her version of order. I'm sorry she dragged you into it, I said. He waved it off. Parents, they forget adults don't come with receipts. I almost laughed. Almost. When my break came, I checked my phone. A picture from Ivy flashed across the screen. Her lease. Just the lease. Nothing else. A minute later, the message came. January rent, please. Not demands. Not entitlement. Just the smallest sliver of humility. It hurt more than I expected. I texted back, I'll cover January. Then we do a budget. Real one. And I'll babysit for interviews. But I'm not paying for Mom's curtains anymore. 3 dots. Then, those curtains are hideous. It was the closest thing we'd had to a joke in months. When my shift ended, I drove home with a knot in my chest. The streetlights blurred through my windshield, turning everything into streaks of gold and white. The heater made that old clicking noise, the one I kept promising myself I'd fix. Maybe I would. Now that half my paycheck wasn't already spent before I earned it. I lit a candle when I got home. The apartment still smelled like detergent and faint oil from my jacket. As I sat on the couch, the quiet wasn't as sharp this time. It felt less like emptiness and more like space I could finally use. When the knock came, it wasn't angry. It wasn't frantic. It was soft. I opened the door to see Ivy holding a laundry basket. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from exhaustion. Her kids ran past me, climbing onto the couch like it was a jungle gym. "Sorry," she muttered. "They missed you." I stepped back. "Let them." She stayed in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was welcome. "You coming in?" I asked. Slowly, she nodded and entered. She set the basket down, rubbed her arms like she'd been cold for days. Ivy looked smaller than I remembered, like the divorce and the expectations and Mom's constant scripts had hollowed her out inch by inch. "I'm not here to ask for money," she said quickly. "Good," I said. "I don't have any." She huffed out a laugh, then covered her face with her hands. It wasn't crying, it was breaking open. "I'm sorry," she said through her fingers, "for how Mom talked to you, and for letting her." "You didn't let her," I said. "You were just trying to survive." "That's not an excuse. It's the truth." She dropped her hands. "Mom said you had savings." "I have a 3-month emergency fund," I said. "It took 5 years. It's for transmissions and wrists, not for curtains." She let out a sad laugh, shaking her head. "I hate her curtains." We both laughed then, quiet but real. Her kids jumped on my couch. One yelled, "Marge, look, I'm a wolf." I smiled. "Yeah, you are." Ivy leaned against me, and it startled me how small she felt. "I don't want you to take care of us because Mom said so," she whispered. "I want help because I actually need it, and because you're my sister." I put an arm around her. "From now on," I said, "we do things the right way. Not Mom's way, not Dad's way." She nodded against my shoulder. "And Marge," she said quietly. "Yeah? You coming back to the family house? That's your choice, right?" "No," I said, "that's my boundary." She closed her eyes and whispered, "Good." The kids kept bouncing on the couch. The candle flickered. The apartment didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like the start of something new. The days after the confrontation with my parents felt like the world had reset itself, even if the pieces still didn't fit quite right. It was a slow burn, adjusting to this new version of myself where saying no didn't feel like I was breaking something inside. I kept waiting for guilt to flood in, but it didn't. Instead, I felt lighter. I spent most of the next few days working, my thoughts consumed by the shift I had made, but there was always something in the back of my mind, something heavier. The family wasn't done with me yet. They were like a storm gathering in the distance, and I couldn't tell if it was coming toward me or if it was just waiting for the right moment to strike. The first real test came 2 weeks later. I was deep in my shift when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at it, saw Mom's name, and turned the screen over. Not now. I didn't have time for their pressure or their anger, but when I saw the voicemail icon, something gnawed at me. I knew it would be important. Mom's messages always had a way of demanding attention, like they were urgent, even if they weren't. When I finally listened to it on my break, her voice was colder than it had been before. "Marjorie, you're still being childish, you know. You walked away, and that's fine, but you're going to have to face reality. Family doesn't just stop. You don't get to choose when you come back and when you don't. It's your responsibility. You always knew that." The words hit like a slap. "It's your responsibility. You always knew that." She was trying to guilt me, trying to draw me back into their orbit like I had no say in the matter. I didn't call her back. Not then. Instead, I got into my truck after my shift, turning over the last few days in my mind. Every moment I spent keeping my distance felt like an internal tug of war. Part of me still clung to the familiar weight of my role in their lives, and part of me breathed easier without it. Then, later that night, Ivy texted me, "Mom's calling you a traitor." I stared at the screen. Traitor. The word felt like a razor, thin and sharp, cutting into what I thought was a solid foundation. My eyes lingered on the message for a long moment. Was this what I had become in their eyes? Was I a traitor just because I refused to keep playing their game? I typed out a reply, slowly. "I'm not a traitor. I'm setting a boundary." She didn't respond immediately, but I could feel her confusion through the words she didn't say. After a few minutes, though, she sent another text. "I get it, but it's hard. Mom's hard to deal with when she gets like this. You know she's just trying to get us all back together." I thought about what she said. Maybe Mom was trying to force some version of togetherness that worked for her, but it never worked for me. The truth was, every time I did what she asked, I felt smaller. I felt like a piece of machinery in their family system, one that they relied on but didn't really care for. And now every time I stepped away from that, it felt like freedom. The next day, I woke up early to work on my finances, setting the boundaries I needed to make sure I was never pulled back into that cycle again. The first step was a budget. The second was a savings plan that actually made sense. I wanted to feel like I was in control of my life. I didn't want to let them have the power to disrupt my peace. Not anymore. Then came the moment I had been dreading. Dad called. I'd been preparing for this, mentally bracing myself for the weight of his expectations. I didn't pick up the phone right away, but eventually I knew I had to. Marjorie, Dad's voice was lower than it used to be, a little quieter, like he wasn't sure of his footing anymore. I've been thinking about what you said, and, maybe you're right about some things. We've relied on you too much, and we've never really asked you if you wanted to be our bank. So I want to make it right. I'm sorry. The apology was there, but it was buried under so much pride, so much defensiveness, that I could barely hear it. And honestly, I didn't know what to say, so I said the only thing that felt true. I'm not doing this for you, Dad. I'm doing it for me, and I'm done being your backup plan. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then he cleared his throat. You know, I didn't mean to put all that on you, Marge. I know you've had your own stuff to deal with. He paused. But that's how it's always been, right? We don't know how to do this any other way. We're just trying to survive, like you are. It wasn't a great apology, but it was something. Something I hadn't heard before. It wasn't enough to undo everything, but it was a start. I sighed, feeling the tension leave my shoulders. I know you're just trying to survive, I said softly. But I can't live like that anymore. You want to make it right? Stop treating me like an ATM and start treating me like a person. That's where we start. He didn't respond for a long time, but I didn't need him to. I knew I'd said my piece. That night, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my savings goal for the next few months. It was small, just a few $1,000s. But it felt like more than just money. It felt like the first step toward taking back control of my life, to stop giving my energy away to people who didn't value me the way I needed to be valued. The hardest part was admitting I wasn't going to be able to fix them. I wasn't going to be able to save my family, but I could save myself. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. The morning the real shift happened wasn't dramatic. There wasn't a phone explosion of messages from Mom, or a guilt-laced voicemail from Dad. There was just quiet. A strange, heavy quiet I had never known in my life. I brewed coffee, sat on the couch, listened to the silence, and for once, instead of feeling like a weight, it felt like air. It was almost noon when my doorbell rang. Not frantic, not angry, just a steady knock. I opened it to find my mother standing there, holding a grocery store cake with sloppy blue lettering. We love you. Love was smudged, like someone had dragged a thumb through the icing. She pushed past me without waiting for an invitation. That was her way. The house was hers if she wanted it. This place is depressing, she said immediately, looking around. You need curtains. I didn't say anything. She wasn't here for my feelings. Not yet, anyway. She set the cake down on my counter. You look thin, she said. Are you eating? Mom, I said quietly, what do you want? She went still, her back straightened, shoulders squared as if she were bracing for impact. You can't mean this, Marjorie, her voice trembled. You can't mean to abandon your family. That word, abandon, hit differently coming from her. My entire life had been built around making sure no one ever felt that way. But I swallowed hard and said, I didn't abandon anyone. I stopped being the only one keeping the roof from falling in. She looked wounded. Do you know how you sound? Yes, I said, like someone with a spine. Her lips pressed into a line. Then the real reason she came surfaced. You embarrassed us at New Year's. You embarrassed your father. Ivy cried all night. You humiliated this family. I took a breath. You told me I was responsible for Ivy and the kids. You said simple as that. You said if I disagreed, the door was right there, so I took the door, and now you're mad I used it. Her face crumpled for a second, just a second, before she reassembled it. I didn't raise you to talk to me like this. You raised me to be your backup plan, I corrected. You raised me to be the one who fixes everything you don't want to deal with. She stiffened. You're so dramatic. You took my debit card, I said. You left a note. You had money, she snapped. You forged my name on a loan, I said. That's a crime. A family loan, she hissed. No, I said softly. A crime. Her hands trembled then, not with fear, with anger, with the realization that I wasn't bending this time. You're choosing to hurt us, she whispered. You're choosing to punish us. No, Mom, I'm finally choosing me. She stared at me for a long moment, and something in her eyes shifted. Not forgiveness, not understanding, but recognition. She knew she'd lost control. She just didn't know how to live without it. Without another word, she grabbed the cake and stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard the frame shook. The silence she left behind was heavy, but not painful. Not anymore. I sat down at the table, exhaled, and whispered to no one, "This piece is mine." 2 nights later, there was another knock. This one didn't belong to Mom, it was Ivy. She stood there with the laundry basket, the kids bouncing behind her like excited puppies. "Can we come in?" she asked. "Always," I said. The kids burst past me, launching themselves onto my couch. Ivy followed more slowly. She looked tired, but not defeated. "We stayed at Mom's last night," she said. "Big mistake. She kept saying you were selfish, that you abandoned us, that you think you're better." I sighed. I figured. "I don't think you're selfish," she said softly. "I think you're brave." That surprised me enough to sit down. She sat beside me. "I've been living on autopilot for so long," Ivy said, twisting her hands. "Letting Mom talk for me, letting her run my life, letting her tell me what I should feel, and I just let her, because it was easier." "You were surviving," I said. "That's not a weakness." "It felt like one," she whispered. We sat quietly for a while. The kids flipped through channels on the TV, arguing about cartoons. Ivy looked at them the way only a mother can. Love mixed with exhaustion, pride tangled with fear. "I know you won't cut me off," she said. "Mom keeps saying you will, that you're done with all of us." "I'm done with them," I said. "I'm done being used. But you're different." She nodded. "I want to do better. For me. For the kids." "I know." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I don't want your money anymore," she murmured. "I want your support, your advice, your help when I actually need it, not when Mom says I do." "That," I said, "I can give." She exhaled shakily. "And Marge? Yeah? Thanks for teaching me what a boundary looks like." Later that night, after Ivy and the kids left, I pulled my old financial binder from under the bed, the one with the green cover and the neat tabs and years of my life inside it. Every payment I made for them, every bill I covered, every loan I took, every transfer I made, every sacrifice. I flipped through it slowly. It felt heavy in my hands, not just with paper, with years. Years of being the responsible one, the fix-it daughter, the quiet provider, the family foundation no one thanked. Then, without letting myself think too hard, I carried the binder to the kitchen sink. I tore out the first page, then another, then another. One by one, I ripped away 5 years' worth of being their safety net. The sink filled with scraps of my past, ink-stained, torn, fluttering like fragments of an old version of me. When the binder was empty, I dropped it into the trash. It didn't feel symbolic, it felt literal, a shedding of weight. My life was finally mine. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The weeks that followed were nothing like I'd expected. There was no storm of messages or desperate attempts to pull me back in. No more guilt trips from Mom. No more lectures from Dad. It wasn't easy, but I had expected a battle. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly the silence between us settled in like an old coat I couldn't seem to shake off. At work, I buried myself in the grind, but my thoughts always drifted back to the family I had left behind. Every call, every text, every memory of them pressing their expectations on me now felt like a distant echo. And yet, no matter how far I pushed them from my mind, I still carried the weight of what had happened, what hadn't happened. Ivy came over more often, not for help, not for money, but for comfort. Sometimes it felt like the two of us were healing from the same wound. She'd bring the kids over and we'd build Lego sets together or play games on the floor like we were little again. Those moments, simple as they were, filled the gaps that had once been filled by guilt and obligation. But one day the phone rang again. It was Mom. I stood there staring at it for a long time before I picked up. My heart beat loud in my chest. "Hello?" I said. "Marjorie." Mom's voice cracked with that familiar bittersweetness. "I need to talk to you." "About what?" I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. I wasn't sure I was ready for another confrontation. About what happened. With the loan. I thought maybe we could come to some kind of agreement." The words hit me like a slap. It was as if she hadn't heard anything I'd said before. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was trying to manipulate me into cleaning up her mess again. "I already told you what happened," I said, forcing myself to stay calm. "I'm not responsible for that loan, and I'm not going to fix it for you." There was a pause, and I could almost feel her stewing on the other end of the line. "You know," she said, voice low, "you could at least acknowledge that I'm trying." I blinked. Was she trying? Or was she just angry I wasn't playing along anymore? "I don't owe you that, Mom," I said quietly. You don't get to pretend that I'm the problem here. You've been using me, and I'm done with it. I could hear her breath catch, like I'd struck her, and I probably had. She wasn't used to hearing me stand up for myself. She wasn't used to hearing me be anything other than the daughter who bends and fixes and gives. Fine, she snapped, after a long silence. I'll deal with it myself. But don't think you can just walk away and pretend nothing's changed. You're right, I said, my voice steady now. Everything's changed, and I'm not coming back to clean up your mess. The line went dead. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't say anything. I set the phone down, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders for the first time in weeks. That night, I sat down with Ivy. She'd been quiet since my conversation with Mom. I could see she was waiting for me to say something, to offer some kind of explanation for what had just happened. Mom called, I said, not sure how to explain the emptiness I felt after hanging up. She wants me to fix everything again. Ivy was quiet, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite place. Did you? No, I said firmly, and I'm not going to. She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her in a while. You're doing it, Marge. You're really doing it. I'm trying, I whispered, but it's still hard. I'm not sure if she'll ever stop trying to pull me back in. Maybe, Ivy said softly, but you don't have to go back. The words stuck with me. Maybe I didn't have to go back. Maybe the family I thought I had to save wasn't my responsibility anymore. It wasn't long after that I got a call from the bank. It wasn't Mom calling to apologize or beg. It was the loan officer, confirming that the name on the account had been removed. My name. They told me the process was complete. That was it. I was free. I hung up the phone and leaned back, my heart racing. It felt like the final piece had fallen into place, the last barrier between me and a life that didn't revolve around them. I couldn't say I was happy, but I was at peace. For the first time, I didn't feel like a weight was dragging me down, a tether that kept me chained to a family dynamic that didn't respect me, didn't value me. In the days that followed, I stopped checking my phone for messages. I didn't ask how things were going with Mom, or if Dad had changed his mind. I let go. And as I moved forward, something in me shifted. I wasn't their fixer anymore. I wasn't their backup plan. I was just me. For the first time in my life, I was enough, just as I was. I could breathe again, and that was all I needed.